Hello and welcome to the Red Bull Ring in Austria. We're here for another edition of After the Flag. We're in probably the best media centre in the paddock here in Austria. I'm joined by Birt and Simon Crafar as we round up the action. What a 7 days we've had in MotoGP, and the same three men dominating as well, with Jorge Lorenzo taking victory here in Austria. Matt, what a race we've just seen. Marquez in second place, Dovizioso third. We've got to concentrate really on those three guys. We'll talk a bit about the woes for Yamaha and the best of the rest, but we have to start off with Jorge Lorenzo. Just as he did last weekend in Brno, his tactics change, but an epic battle, a titanic fight for victory here at the Red Bull Ring.
Yeah, another classic here in Spielberg, Steve. Jorge Lorenzo, two very unlike Lorenzo races over the last 7 days. A classic encounter, as you say, reminiscent of their great fight, Lorenzo and Marquez in Mugello a couple of years ago. Jorge played to his strengths today, using the soft front, soft rear tyre. He managed it so brilliantly in the first half of the race. He was a little bit concerned. Marquez did get that 1 second buffer. His only real worry, though, was whether or how the rear tyre grip would fade on that Repsol Honda, but he hung in there, used the advantage of the Ducati on the straights and in the brakes, and in that third sector, boy did he do his homework. He was so weak all weekend in sector 3, which was Marc's strongest sector on the course. Lorenzo was absolutely razor sharp in that third sector. The Ducati worked brilliantly as well, coming out of turn 8 on that run down to turn 9. He didn't let Marc get close to him for a last lap attack like Marc did on Dovizioso last year. It was Lorenzo at his brilliant best. He said afterwards, one of the best races of his Grand Prix career. Who are we to argue with? It was absolutely phenomenal. Another classic served up here in Austria.
It didn't necessarily go the way we thought it might, to be honest, Simon. All three of us actually said that Marc would probably come out victorious. The start of the race, Marc really pushed the Ducatis. He asked questions of them. And it was rather interesting, as Matt just pointed out, that all three of those went for completely different tyre setup.
Yeah, I mean, there was the tyre bit that made it interesting, but like, we all expected Marc to be strong, and he was, you know, and by 10 laps or coming up to 10 laps, we were going like, you know, is he going to run away? Is he going to make it boring? But the thing is, we all know how fantastic Marc is, you know, there's no denying that. But Jorge, I think, matched him blow for blow today, you know. And going back to Marc, he was saying in debriefs early on, I know you mentioned it in the race, Matt, how off these slow corners, the first 3 gears, it's not about power because there is too much. It's about managing the wheelie, getting that drive on the ground, using your body weight, the electronics, the wings, everything to try and manage the wheelie. It's 4, 5 and 6th gear where the Duke goes, but it's only a short amount of time, you know. And what I'm trying to say is Jorge matched Marc in the turns, you know. Last year, you saw Marc had the advantage in the corners, but today we saw Jorge match Marc everywhere, you know. It was, I think, stunning, and he's the new version, isn't he, you know, that he fights just as hard as Marc. I just think it's fantastic for the championship to have 2 guys riding like that.
Especially given the fact that, Matt, you said that he's learning all the time at the age of 31. We have to talk about Marc Marquez. He said yesterday in the press conference, of course, I have to think about the championship. He didn't think about the championship at all.
No, there was not 1 millisecond in that race where Marc Marquez flicked into World Championship mode at all. He's been so desperate all weekend, Steve. We talked about it in commentary, winning here and beating Ducati at the Red Bull Ring. This is Ducati land. It's now Jorge Lorenzo land as well, but Marc has had almost this obsession to come here and show that another brand can win. It was the Marquez way, wasn't it? It was all in. He fought tooth and nail. He tried to make that break, and when he couldn't, he knew that the Ducatis were going to come back to him. Interesting strategy from Marc. He ran the hard rear tyre, which he was so strong on in the warm-up. He said he tried to make that break because he knew that Lorenzo and Dovizioso were on slightly softer rubber, and if he could break them and then them trying to catch him would run into rear tyre problems themselves, it just didn't quite happen. It was almost the perfect strategy, but Marc Marquez, it was typical, like we say, all or nothing for Marc Marquez. He tried absolutely everything. There was contact with them coming over the start-finish line. That was really, really close. And then at the third corner, Lorenzo knew it was coming. He actually rode pretty astute, Jorge Lorenzo, in turn number 3, because he knew that Marc was going to dive bomb him in that corner. Marc was so strong on the brakes. Lorenzo actually said he was so strong on the brakes, it was almost like he was breaking up the tarmac. But Lorenzo just waited. It was the classic old round the outside Profuera, wasn't it, from Jorge Lorenzo? Classic, just let him come on the outside. He knew that he had the grunt and drive coming out of turn 3, and from that moment on, he controlled it. Marc just could not get close enough. Lorenzo had T3 nailed, turn 8 absolutely bang on the money. There's just no way that Mark could get close enough to have that lunge like he did on Andrea Dovizioso last year, but he threw everything at it, as we always know he would do.
59-point lead he takes into Silverstone, Simon, which is obviously the more important thing, but he left it all on the line. It was fantastic racing between two Spanish giants, 11 World Championships between them.
The thing that I want to throw in as well is because Mark is so good, you know, and makes so few mistakes, you know, he didn't give anyone a chance. He gave nothing away. And if Jorge had made a big mistake and lost a bit of time, there would be no coming back from it, you know, especially in those last half dozen laps. But when Jorge did make a little mistake and ran wide, you know, on that turn 3, the tight right-hander, he ran a little bit wide. He did it also when Mark passed him, you know, and he pushed him out a little bit. The thing that I was really impressed with Jorge there to stay with Mark was how quickly when he was in there, like most riders would run a little bit wide and get past, Jorge managed to get it turned and back on the throttle, so he minimized the loss, you know, and was right there all the way to the end. But could talk about it all day because it's fantastic fight and finish.
Andrea Dovizioso was one of the favourites going into the race. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for him. Victorious in Brno today. Unfortunately, it looked like tyre woes.
Yeah, I mean, the ups and downs of racing encapsulated in the space of 7 days. The joy, the delirium of winning in Brno 7 days ago and then brought crashing back down to earth today, wasn't he? Andrea Dovizioso, he's tasted that bitter taste of defeat here before against Andrea, you know, only a couple of years ago. He was desperate, wasn't he, to try and be the man that continued Ducati's golden run here, Steve. He just spent too much time at the start of the race. He couldn't find a way through safely on his teammate. We know that Andrea Dovizioso, he's not going to do anything silly. He's not going to clatter or risk taking the pair of the factory Ducatis out of the race and letting Marquez just cruise with it. Trying desperately, though, to overtake Jorge Lorenzo, because we know Lorenzo is fantastic on the brakes. The Ducati's brilliant with braking stability. Not an easy guy to overtake, and in doing that, Andrea just cooked up his medium rear tyre. Afterwards, it's always clever, isn't it? Clever after the event in hindsight. He feels like he should have gone for that soft rear tyre, which Lorenzo made work brilliantly, but he went with what he thought was going to be the best over the race distance. It just didn't work out. A key moment for Dovizioso in the race was that mistake at the first corner. We don't see Andrea make too many mistakes, but that cut him adrift of the battle between Mark and Jorge at the front, and he just could never recover it back up because he'd already at that point spent the best of his medium rear tyre. But yeah, you could see he was bitterly disappointed, very frustrated, because Ducati are still dominant here in the Red Bull ring, but it wasn't him doing the business on the top step of the podium today.
We're rapidly running out of time, so I'll just quickly mention Cal Crutchlow, a solid 4th position for him. Of course, we had a 5th for Danilo Petrucci. Just very quickly before we go, Yamaha woes. What on earth is going on there?
Well, the thing is, up until now, it's been the riders complaining about it, and there hasn't been any real, how do you put it, proof. But they've come here, and there was no denying from Yamaha. They even came out and had official apology, like in a press conference, and I can't remember ever seeing a manufacturer doing that, you know. So, because of these slow turns, long straights, 6 kilometres down, you know, through practice and qualifying. There was no hiding the fact that they've got a problem, and yeah, I suppose now also that it takes the pressure off the riders, meaning up until now people could say that it's the riders complaining and not doing the job, but it's pretty obvious, isn't it, guys?
Well, we're out of time, I'm afraid, guys. I know we could talk about this all night. My thanks to Matt and to Simon, and thanks very much for joining us here this weekend. That's all we've got time for then. After the flag in Austria, we will be back in a couple of weeks at Silverstone.
Here he comes now. Jorge Lorenzo. Oh, they almost touch on the straight. Lorenzo leads from Marquez and Dovi. Here comes Marquez again, another block pass, and they both come to a standstill again. Lorenzo, though, clever. Austria is Lorenzo land. And Ducati win again at the Red Bull Ring.